Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's Dr. Karina here. In today's episode, I am joined by the lovely Johannah Ashley. We have a beautiful conversation about classical Chinese medicine and in particular talking about the pulses, the mysterious realm of gathering information from feeling into a patient's pulse. We take a windy, gorgeous, free-flowing conversation that I think you're going to love. So let's get into it. Hello, Johannah.
Hi, Karina.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm having a fabulous morning and I'm thrilled that you are coming on today to talk about what we talk about, which I think is going to be pulses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big topic.
Big topic. And sometimes I just like to start by chatting to practitioners about their journey, because I know I've heard you say a few times that classical Chinese medicine didn't really come across your radar until quite a ways into your career. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, where you started as a practitioner and then what your journey's been like since finding classical, if we could begin there.
Sure. So I was very, very lucky in that I found Chinese medicine very young. I was 19 when I enrolled in my first course, which was a very funny story anyway. My auntie was determined to that's what I should be doing. And I was like, I don't know anything about it. I'm not interested. I was going to do naturopathy. And she's like, no, don't do that. So eventually she convinced me to go and watch her get a treatment. And I rolled up there with I was at that time enrolled in engineering, and rolled up with my New Scientist magazine under my arm. and then just stood there with my mouth hanging open the whole time, because I got hit by this lightning bolt. It was just like, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Oh.
So then I enrolled in the course. I had never received acupuncture. Sorry about that. I'd never received it. I didn't really know much about it, but I just knew it was what I was supposed to do. So then, so I kind of graduated when I was about 22, 23, and moved up to the country in central Victoria. And I've been practicing here since then. So about 21 years. And I dabbled in all sorts of things. I was trying to find my thing, my little bit that was always the older stuff that got me, always this sort of more, the Chinese medicine that spoke to the spirit that really kind of got me excited. And so I dabbled in 5-element acupuncture, and I really loved that. And I thought that really opened up a lot of things for me. It was really great to have done that, because it really prepared me for being so able to receive the classical acupuncture when I finally just said to the universe, okay, just send me the teacher. I'm ready. And literally, it's so bizarre. But literally weeks later, I won a ticket to go to Anne Sinew's workshop in Melbourne. And I hadn't actually never heard of it. I didn't know the book. I didn't know anything. It was like free PD, awesome. And then, then it was another one of those experiences where it was just like, I felt like someone spirit had picked me up by the head and plonked me there. I was like, oh, this is it. This is the teacher. This is the stuff. This is the thing that really makes my heart. And then that's it really. Since then, that was about 6 years ago.
Okay. Wow. What was your aunt's relationship to the medicine?
She just always received acupuncture for her own health, and she loved it. And I don't know, I think she just saw something. She just must have known. She ended up getting glioblastoma, and she died about 10 years ago. If I'm ever grateful for her for helping me along the way onto my path.
Yeah,
And
that's
it was
amazing.
beautiful because I got to go and treat her and lie with her on the bed and just be with her through that time and have beautiful tools and a way to connect with her and help her through that process of dying. Yeah.
Mm, what a gift.
I know, for both of us.
Yes. Yes, she must have just known, as you say, and just thrust you into the spotlight so you could feel that message come in. I love that. I had such a visual of seeing you standing there with the magazine and some kind of intuitive Shakti spirit, whatever, just went this. And you went, okay, wow, you've got my attention. I say yes.
Yeah, well, when you get that, right, it's indescribable and it's so clear,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no arguing.
No, it's not. It's destiny. We use that word a lot, but it's destiny, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think so. Like that natural unfoldment, right, of the next step, the next
And I
growth.
feel like, yeah, I feel like that thing that you've just described is what most people who are studying Chinese medicine are yearning for, because there's some strong magnetism that brings all of us to the medicine. And I'm not sure if this was the same for you, but definitely when I was studying, you're sort of waiting for that really magical moment to happen. And it snakes around as you're studying because sometimes it just chips away at your spirit and you're not sure you're not sure the power of acupuncture. And the confidence in the power of acupuncture, for me anyway, kept getting a little bit diminished as you're influenced by different teachers and influenced by just a very conservative approach, which I understand. But perhaps like you, now that I've been studying with Anne as well, the magic is back and it's stronger than ever. Yeah, it's
I was
great.
so lucky because my first course was at Victoria University, and it was a course that's not been available. It closed down, unfortunately, but it was the only program that was acupuncture only for 4 years at the time. And, my heart was saying it's got to be acupuncture. I'm not really interested in herbs at the time. And Kerry Watson ran that course, and he was the most, he was, they wheeled him out in first year and he was just like so passionate and he just fired everyone up. It's like, yes, 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 Chinese medicine's the best. And Peter Ferrigno was another lecturer that I had there, and he was just this little ball of passion and energy, and yeah, they were like little beacons along the way for me to, and I just knew. I mean, I think we all just know acupuncture is really powerful. There is something there. And before I found, the complement channels, I just knew that, and I was so frustrated, because I was like, and it wasn't like I wasn't helping people before I started practicing this way. I was, but it was like circling around and around, and I wanted to, I knew that there was a way to get in deeper and then create more lasting, longer, profound change.
And do you feel that happens now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So amazing. So amazing. So beautiful. And that's primarily what you work with now as a practitioner, isn't it? I've heard you say that you pretty much now just focus on the complement channels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I used to have a full dispensary and have herbs. I went back and did a second degree to do the herbs, but acupuncture was always my first love, and it was always the thing that, I felt really called to. And then when I heard Anne say it's its own modality, you don't need anything else, this is it, I was like, I knew it. Thanks for telling me that. I'm going to try this out. So I actually just stopped doing herbs just to see what results I could get just with the complement channels. And now, I mean, I've given the dispensary away. I don't have it anymore. I don't hardly think to use them. I mean, it's sort of comes and goes, but yeah, it's my relationship to him has really changed as a result, I suppose.
Well, that's how you started, right? You started studying just acupuncture because you knew it.
Yeah.
And then when the teacher arrived and confirmed that, I suppose it was the permission to go, I'm going to lean into what I instinctively knew and just give it my all. That's great.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, it's absolutely true. It's just that we just need all the channels.
We do need all the channels.
Just the primary channels is a little bit more limited, but if we use all the channels that are available to us, completely changes. It's like only reading like 1/5 of the book, you know. When you have the whole book, it's like, oh, okay.
And we will get to pulses, but for people listening that might not know what you mean when you say complement channels or the channels besides the primary channels, because anybody that's listening to this that's studying TCM at any Chinese medicine school might not have heard of any other channels except perhaps the 8 extraordinary channels.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us just a little bit about what are the complement channels?
All right. So
you know, you can be as brief as you like. It doesn't have to be too extensive.
Well, you know, the complement channels are the low channels, the sinew channels, the divergence, and the 8 extraordinary channels. And the primary channels are kind of in the middle. You know, like the in the yin level, the moderate level, you know, they're in the everyday workings, but then there's all these other levels of our being that get addressed by these other channel systems. And so when we use them all, we have this ability to treat a person on all levels. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah. And what is it about the primary channels that doesn't actually help us to access the parts of the body when things go perhaps terribly wrong? And when you're only using the primary channels and you're doing that circling around that you described before, what is it that the primary channels are not able to do in acupuncture?
Well, in my opinion, I think, you know, the primary TCM, the way that we practice or is taught today, is rather a modern approach to Chinese medicine. And it needs to be in the context of how they practice it in China. Because in China, you treat the primary channels, but you treat them every day for a period of time. And what that does is it gets the primary channels working so well that they process pathology for you. So, but if like in the Western context where we only see people once a week or once a fortnight, the complement channels allow us to access that pathology directly. Because what happens is the body keeps the pathology out of the primary channel because it wants to keep it away from the organ systems. And if the pathology enters the primary channel, you know, it can get to the organ and cause death. So these complement channels are places and reservoirs where all the pathology gets put to keep it out of there, right? To keep us well. So it's like going straight to the source of where it's being held versus, you know, if I get fit enough, I'll be healthy, you know, like if I just do this, and eventually I'll be able to get rid of that stuff. It takes more, you know, more regular treatment to do that. It doesn't really work in the context of how clinic in Australia works, you know.
That's a really great way of explaining that. And I might just add to that, the body in its remarkable wisdom will find ways and places to park things that are problematic, but they build up, right? Yes. Because a lot of the time, but it's not the only thing, but our lifestyle choices are creating those problems. What we're eating, what we're not eating, what we're doing with our energy, what we're doing with our stress levels, where our headspace is at. And so the body will just keep building up all of that stuff until there's nowhere to put it, and then it can spill into other places. And we don't ever think about that. We're educated to think about health in really interesting ways in Western society. And often it is, if you just keep overextending yourself physically, doing more workouts, eating less, or stripping yourself of calories, that's how you create a healthy body. But that's been completely flipped from what I've been learning in Chinese medicine, classical Chinese medicine, which also kind of heralds back to wisdom that we've had from generations past. It's simple. Everyone wants a hack. Everyone wants the life hack, but it is actually the simple stuff. Go to bed early, get good sleep, eat well, not too much, not too little, but eat real food and eat well that includes fats. Make sure the body's hydrated. Make sure that there's joy, connection to joy, and don't overdo it. I'm sure there's probably more you could add to that list.
Up here, wear socks and slippers around the house in the wintertime. Wear a scarf. Yeah.
Keep warm.
Keep warm. Yeah.
Keep warm. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what role does the pulse play in this, and what's your relationship to pulse taking? And maybe we'll just segue in from there.
Well, the pulse is such a mysterious, amazing thing, you know. It's to me, it's that point of contact with your patient's energy systems. It's that kind of like you kind of make this little opening that opens up, and it's like you get to see inside and see this clear picture of, this is what's here. This is what's really within this person, like where they're at. It's such a privilege, and it's such a personal kind of connection. The things that we can receive from the pulse, people can be quite startled, you know, by that. Yeah. But I kind of see it's almost like an alternate dimension where you kind of enter into this alternate space where your two systems meet, and from that you receive a message of where to go today. You know, how should we help this person today?
Yeah. And for people listening that are not sure what we're talking about when a practitioner is feeling the radial artery on the wrist and then, you know, going quiet and probably looking quite intense on their face, and you're laying back going, what information are they gathering from feeling my pulse? Patients are so curious about it. And I suppose the more that you learn in classical Chinese medicine, the more that dimensional space just keeps opening up and up and up, and the more finer detail actually flows to you as the practitioner to give you information about what to do on that day. Is that, would you say that's on the point?
It's an ever expansive practice. I don't know if I don't think it's not something that you'd ever stop learning about, you know, because the complexity of humans is ever ending, and our ability to receive changes, and like there's so many factors, I suppose.
Yeah. In clinic, do you primarily use the pulse as your diagnostic tool? Do you ever make decisions about what to do before you get information from the pulse?
All the time. And then I put it on the shelf and I take the pulse. All the time I'm saying to the person, I think we're going to do this, but let's just take the pulse. And then I go, no, we're not doing that. They're like, all the time. I'm like, yeah, I know. So, you know, I mean, I try to go, oh yeah, there's these ideas I have. They're nice ideas. Let's see what's really going on.
Oh, that's such a powerful thing to say, because so often when someone's in front of us and they're telling us things and we're putting pieces of the puzzle together, we can be in our heads and going, oh, I know what's going on here. this is the problem. We're going to do this and this and this. And you start making a plan. But then when you feel the pulse and you get something entirely different, I know for myself, sometimes I feel the pulse, and even just at the beginning place of where I am with learning this, this aspect of ancient medicine, I'll go, oh, I'm getting a really, really clear chow pulse. Could that be right?
Mm.
And I have moments of being not sure if I trust to go with that. How did you get through that part?
It still happens to me, Karina.
Okay.
Just the other week, I had sometimes, I had a patient come in and they had COVID, and after COVID they'd had antivirals because they're terrified of getting sick, so they had the antivirals and they already had a shoulder injury. And anyway, they came in with extreme excruciating pain in their shoulder post-COVID. And the pulse said Daimai. That's like, it didn't tell me sinews, it didn't tell me anything, just Daimai. It's like, you've got to be kidding, right? Like, what? But I've learned that you just have to trust. It worked. The pain immediately went away. And I can start to kind of make sense of it, but it still is not something that I would have logically come to on my own. So I think if you can just step into the unknown, it's like that. There's so much of this medicine is that, right? Just stepping into the unknown, stepping into the void and trust, and just go, this is the guide. The pulse is my guide. I'm just going to follow it. And sometimes it's not till the patient comes back and they tell you what's happened, what the change is, and how their pulse has changed again. You go, oh, right, that's why I did that. Yeah, okay. And we don't have to know everything, right? We don't have to understand, really. I mean, it's nice to. It makes us good. Our ego, but we don't probably,
Yeah, that's so much about this is not understanding, I think, and sort of like what you were saying before with just really knowing that acupuncture was for you, that's where you were going to really land and everything would flourish within that space. I think when I was at school, I just knew that feeling the pulses was extremely important. And when you're at school, what you learn about pulses, it's just a starter. It's really just to whet your appetite because it's incredibly subjective. You might have one teacher feel a pulse in front of you and tell you a quality about it. They might say, that's wiry. And then someone else will feel it and say, no, that's something else. It's really difficult to know what's what and what you're actually feeling. Yeah. And then what I really love about learning pulses in this classical way is that it's very, very clear. Even if you might not feel it yet and know what you're feeling, it's laid out in an incredibly clear way, detailed and rich, and it's going to take time. But for me as a new practitioner, I feel like I'm so heady and so structured. For me, it almost feels like a relief to say to myself, trust the pulse, keep getting familiar with the pulse, keep letting the pulse tell you what's going on, get out of your head. Don't even think about what you think is wrong with this patient. Just let the pulse tell you, learn the channels, and then work with the channel that the pulse tells you to work with. And actually that will be like a holiday.
But I think it comes from this idea that the doctor fixes you. This is what we have in the West, you go to the doctor and they fix you and they give you something and you get better. And that's not what we do, right? We don't fix people. We don't actually do anything except for open ourselves up as a conduit to receive how we can facilitate something for someone else. So the pulse is that gateway, it's that translation system for us to receive a message. And the person is doing all the work themselves. Like, we're just a catalyst, for that change. It's like we can make a suggestion following their spirit, what they want, and then the rest is up to the person. And it's such a hard thing to retrain your patients to receive, it's like, they're like, oh, you're so amazing. It's like, no, you're doing the work. You're amazing. Good on you. Well done. You're being open to receive change. You know, if you weren't willing, this wouldn't happen. I'm not doing anything. Your body's doing it.
Secret. That is the secret, the openness to change.
And I think that also takes the pressure off all this heady stuff, because if you see it that way, it's not like you're not going to do something wrong if you're following what you're receiving. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. When you've studied for a really long time, it's such an inversion to feel and trust, because there's this feeling as you go through school that you've got to have it all in here and you've got to stay up in here. And you don't really get taught a lot of unless you've had phenomenal teachers at school that really sparked that intuitive knowing. There's not a lot of intuitive skill taught in school. That was my experience. But so much of where I'm going now with this classical medicine is about when you feel yourself going up into your head, being full of doubt or wondering if you've learned enough or feeling like you've got to study harder. It's almost like a door just goes, no, that's not the way. Yes, there are things to understand, but if you go into the space with a client and you are in your head frantically scrambling through papers in your brain or whatever looking for the answer, that's a block.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the pulse is a meditation, and it can help us if we can sink into it and allow ourselves to sink into this space of feeling and receiving, then we can get out of our heads, you know, and it helps. It's almost as if the practice of the pulse is a practice for helping us with the rest of the medicine. So yeah,
I love that. For people listening, and I know that talking about pulses could become 2 days worth of sharing information more, because there's different levels and there's different qualities and there's different ways of moving through the pulse with your fingers to get information, and there are pulses that you won't find straight away. But I'm just wondering if you might want to walk us through a little bit of like the practice of feeling the pulses, or even just some interesting things about the pulses that might be helpful for people who are just going, I can't feel pulses. I don't know if that's ever going to be part of my practice. And yeah.
Well, you know, it never really was. Well, it was for me, but I think because I, you know, like most people who go through the university system in Australia, we come out with not a really clear way of doing, like knowing what we're doing. I didn't know really. Always felt like I didn't know what I was doing. Even after 10 years of practice, I was like, there's so much more to this, and this is like, so I don't know, you know. But I think I'm going off track, but I think what I learned through that was just, that's what taught me to just feel, because it's like I would receive messages through just having that contact and being open to receive. And it might not necessarily be what was under my fingers, you know, it would be like a channeling, I suppose. And, you know, it's wonderful to have that. And I think most people receive that once they start practicing the pulses anyway, or once they start practicing the medicine, actually. We all do it in the treatment room. We just don't know we're doing it.
Yeah. So something that I can just add something in there. What I felt really useful for myself was just if I was feeling the pulse, and if the pulse had a personality or an emotion or an energy, what would that be? And that would give me a really big clue as to how the patient was feeling. So if they were really stressy or in pain or agitated, or they'd been racing around all morning, I'd be able to reflect back to them, what might have been going on, or if the pulse felt really relaxed versus weeks gone by, I might be able to reflect that back to them and they'll say, yeah, I am really calm today, or yeah, I got some terrible news this morning and I've been really anxious about it. And even if I couldn't clearly discern what's happening in different levels or what is the spleen organ doing, that at least felt like a great overall way of connecting to the feelings that were in there.
Yeah, beautiful.
And sometimes that's all I would go with. I'd go, well, there's a lot of agitation here, so we're just going to do some calming work.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, it can be really simple. You know, it's like all things Chinese medicine. You can keep it like there's these simple, beautifully, elegantly simple things, you know, parts of it, and then there's like infinite complexity. and I, you know, they're not one's not better than the other. I think over time we can explore all those complexities, but I think probably one of the biggest eye-openers for me when I did pulses with Anne was the full depth of the pulse. So just going from taking your fingers even just like above the skin to approaching the skin and slowly pushing down and going through all those layers and then getting to the point where you're about midway and you can feel like the radial artery pumping quite strongly, and then going through that and then going just feeling like this change in the terrain as you go down and approach the bone, and realizing that that's how far down it goes, because, you know, that's not what I knew beforehand. And then coming back up again, you know, just practicing that and just feeling into those places and how they're different from each other, and even feeling like when you feel from the top down to the bone, you know, you're feeling those channels, those Wei channels, the Yin channels, the Yuan channels, and you're feeling how the energy of those feel under your fingers, which is how it feels when you treat the channels too, right? Yeah. That's a really simple starting point.
I love it. It's great, because sometimes people just want the big feeling, and you might only get that big feeling initially when you're very close to the artery and you're pressing into the artery and you're like, oh, now I can feel something. But it's very subtle, but actually as you get in touch with the subtle becomes gross. So I have heard you say that sometimes when you're treating sinews, which is the more superficial place in the body, that you could be resting your fingers on the skin and the pulse is already sort of jumping up into your fingers before you've even really begun any descent. And there can be so much happening right up there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like something's pushing out from the surface. Yeah. And even just feeling where it's calling your attention the most as you go down through those layers. Often, you know, there'll be nothing, and all the information will be at one level and be like, okay, I'm really being guided to go to that level. Let's focus the treatment there. That's the information that they're wanting to give me today. Yeah.
I've been particularly fascinated with the hidden pulses. Maybe because at this stage they have felt, for me personally, the easiest ones to encounter or the easiest ones to recognize. I feel like I've been able to like drop my anchor there at this point in my learnings and get a lot of information there that feels clear and repeatable and astounding too, that you could feel all the way through and sort of get nothing and go, okay, what's happening here? And hidden pulses are where you go all the way down to the bone and with a lot of pressure occlude the pulse entirely and then lift off slowly until they pop up and then press back down, and then there's the information there, which feels like deep sea diving. I just love it. Not that I'm a diver, but the metaphor that I like is deep sea diving.
Well, it really is, right? It is. It's going down into the jing, to the essence of the person.
Yeah.
And seeing if they, what's happening there. Yeah, hidden pulses are very cool.
Very cool.
Mysterious, like that whole beautiful metaphor of Chong being this like sea of mysteries, this, the sea of so many seas are in the Chong.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sort of amorphous kind of mysterious space.
That's fantastic. One of the things I heard you say recently that I loved is that, and you sort of touched on it before, is that the pulse taught you how to treat, or the pulse has taught you about not only the pulse but about how to practice. And I thought that was such a wonderful thing to say, because you've had those moments where you've had an idea and then you've gone in and listened and been open, and a certain channel has said, hi, here's where we need to be, or here's where I'm asking you to come and facilitate something for this person. And even though it might be a surprise, you've gone there, and then maybe have you then gone back to say some notes and books and almost like reverse engineered your way out and gone, oh, that's how that facilitated that. Oh, great. So that means there's a possibility that this particular class of channels can support this particular scenario. Oh, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion myself.
Absolutely. It's absolutely taught me like that. Yeah. And sometimes, like I say, it's when they come back and they tell you what's happened from the treatment that it all starts to land. It's like, oh, right, okay, because that facilitates the release of all that phlegm, or that facilitates this or that. So yes, it's like this beautiful relationship between the pulses and the channels. And it's, well, I suppose they're actually the one thing, really, energetically. And so that they have this back and forth. So the pulses will guide me to the channels, and then the channels, you treat the channels, and then you take the pulse, and then you see how the pulse changes, and then it's, back and forwards. I think that's one of the best things, the most crucial thing that I learned from 5-element acupuncture was to keep checking the pulse. So, to take it at the beginning, to take it after you put the needles in, to take it at the end, or even maybe also in between. And that was like, oh, wow, then you can see what you're doing and how it's changing and what effect it's having. And, it's this like a feedback tool.
It's a great description. Because otherwise, how do you know what's happening?
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I think for people that are still really figuring out, what am I actually feeling? I'm feeling something, but I don't have the language yet to put words to it. But there's a thing here that I have felt before. This is a familiar feeling, but I'm just not quite sure how to categorize it yet. To be able to just ask yourself, all right, well, is that feeling still there after I've put the needles in? And if it is, well, that could be something. And then if it isn't, okay, well, that has changed now. There's a learning there that doesn't necessarily have terms and words yet, but it's a body learning. And I think that's really helpful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's a practice of acupuncture, right? It's not, we're always learning, always learning. Like, I've been practicing 21 years and I'm still learning every time I'm in the clinic. And I think we really, when we stay in our heads, acupuncture works through the body, right? And the change happens, all levels through the body, but also through the energy systems. And how do we feel energy? It's through our body. So there's so much information that's not here, It's that we feel here, that we feel through our hands, that when we're sitting with someone, we can feel their emotion in our body, and that can be a guide. Like, oh,
yeah.
I can, if I connect to the feeling that they're feeling and feed it back to them, that's a huge healing tool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, and I say that to people, oh, it's as if there's this huge weight on your shoulders. Is that right? And they like burst into tears and go, yes. And it allows it to be, that's the treatment too,
Yeah.
I'm going off track, but yeah.
That's great. I love it. It's free flowing. Do you ever feel the channel in your body reflecting the channel of the patient's?
Yeah. So especially since I've been since I started doing remote treatments, I think that definitely does that. I mean, what I'll feel is when I'm activating their channel, it activates in me. Or sometimes when I'm working with their body, I'll get a sensation in my body and I'll think, oh, it's actually blocked there. And when I go to them or ask them, yes, they're experiencing that. So I suppose it's part of that Venn diagram of when we join, we come to connect our energy systems. That's where the information comes back and forth.
Yeah.
Pulse, but also just on the ethers in our bodies.
Yeah. And since you mentioned it, tell us a little bit about remote treatments in the realm of acupuncture. How does that work?
I know. When I first heard about it, I was like, what? That's crazy talk. How can you give acupuncture without needles? I mean, it's at that time, I'd been already experimenting, my poor patients, experimenting with activating the channels without needles. Anyway, so I was like, oh yeah. So yes, and I suppose when you're working with energy, it doesn't have to be, you can be directed by your mind. It doesn't have to be directed, it doesn't have to be in a physical experience, like in the physical body. And what I usually do, I mean, I don't know if there's a one way to do this. I think it's just sort of like you figure out how it works for you. And but basically what you're doing is you're extending your wave field towards where the person is. And I usually imagine that they're in the room with me. I'll actually be at work and I'll imagine that they're on my table. And they'll imagine that I'm in the room with them where they are. And that enables us to connect through time and space. And it's a different process because there isn't a pulse necessarily. Well, there's not a pulse. It's a different kind of connection. It's a different way of gathering information. It's probably more based on their language, on, what's happening for them, sort of thing. And then I will like pretend, I suppose, imagine that I'm placing needles along the pathway and that I'm activating it, and then I hold that field open and I go in and feel through that field and just see what happens. Like it's another one of those experiences where you just have to jump off the cliff and just trust that what happens will be perfect.
Yeah.
You just don't know what's going to happen with a remote treatment. They're kind of exciting in that way. And all this information can come through when you're doing that. Things move and change. Awareness, they'll feel the channel activate in their body. They'll feel things moving and changing. Incredible.
Incredible. Incredible. And do you take pulses remotely? Magical.
I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that.
It is possible.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Everything is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I can't remember where I heard it. I can't remember if it was someone talking about remote treatments in the classical medicine realm or if it was something else. But I heard someone talking about different customs and different traditions and how they practice remote healing. And one example was prayer. One example was people gathering and praying for somebody, say a congregation have come to mass in a Catholic church and they're praying for somebody who's unwell. That's a remote healing. And I thought, oh, of course, all sorts of people have been doing remote healings forever. It just seems the mind the mind expands when you consider that acupuncture could be given without a physical needle being put in your body with someone who's standing next to your body.
Yep.
Remarkable.
I think, to me, we've tried so hard since, 20 years ago when I started going to university to study acupuncture, people were like, what's that? Does that even work? And I would hate bringing it up. I would try to avoid talking to people about it because it was so awkward, But we tried so hard to feel valid and to feel like what we do is a thing and it's real and it works and it helps people. And we've tried to be like legitimized, through Western medicine and all of that. And so we've slowly, it's like, shamanic stuff. Oh, that's not acupuncture. We don't want to be associated with that sort of thing. But that's the roots of our medicine. That's where it came from. That's the heart of it.
Yes.
And I think globally, on a whole, not just to do with Chinese medicine, but globally as a people, we're starting to turn back towards, those traditions, that turn back towards the people, Indigenous peoples and their cultures and how they have connection with life, with nature, with each other, and we're starting to see that in a new light. And I think so it's all time, it's this time that we to rediscover all these things and to say, yes, this and this, you can do this and it's all here and it's all valid and it's all real.
Yeah. And the shamanic roots aspect is a beautiful one to remember, because I think even when you're in the treatment room, something that is powerfully being reiterated over and over again is that even if you physically are in a room as a practitioner, your mental state, your presence, your intention, the clarity in which you are there with what's happening is the potency of the session. Because if you're not present and if you're of absent mind and if you're in a doubting space or if you don't believe that this patient can accept the invitation to change or whatever it is, whatever those kinds of things are that creep in, that can present like an impasse. And whether you're there physically or you're there remotely, this is what I'm currently understanding, is that's where the power is in the mind space, the intent in which you bring to the person.
Oh, absolutely. Where intention goes, energy follows, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's it. It's really simple. Yeah. And it can be and probably the simpler and the clearer the intention, the more powerful too,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the session will be, the intention is cracking open a window to believe that things could change. I set that as homework to this 65-year-old country guy the other day. I was like, could you be free of back pain? And he was like, oh, but I've always had it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I was like, I was like, it's your homework. He's like, what? I said, your homework. I want you to find a way. I want you to see if you can find the possibility that it could be different. And he was like, okay. That.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, I know that you have a really great relationship to Qigong. Did you find that the practice of Qigong has amplified your ability to feel and sense, particularly with things like taking pulses and more energetic information coming through? Have those two things been connected?
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, like it's the practice of being present, right? That's what it brings you. And also, you know, a clarity to my own energy field, like a cleansing that you're doing periodically to try and keep clear and keep grounded and centered, so that you can be really clear with your intention.
Yep.
I have had the opposite problem. I think most of my life I've been very, very, very sensitive, and Qigong's helped me to manage my sensitivity. So, you know, I mean, most practitioners are empaths, you know, like I don't think it'd be weird if you weren't really, right? But that's been something that I've actually had to, for me, it's actually been about like holding it back and regulating when I feel it and when I don't, and having better energetic boundaries and learning to manage them. And so, and Qigong's been just life-changing in that for me. Yeah. To know it's mine or it's not mine. To try and keep my nervous system in, you know, more balanced, and so that can make me more and more present. And then when the more present I am, the more I can differentiate that, you know, the more I can say. Or, you know, often happens in treatments, you know, or a consult, somebody's story activates your own story, and to go, oh, I can feel what's happening for them, and I can feel what's happening for me, and we're going to work through this together, you know. Almost, we're healing that together, or not bringing it, you know, like there's still a fence between, but just all that feeling stuff. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
oh, you have. It's beautiful. Yeah.
So I suppose for me it's the other way around.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's sort of, it almost sounds like Qigong can be a tool, or whatever someone's self-cultivation tool is a tool to sort of help them find a more even keel between whether there's big, wide open sensitivity and not being sure where your edges are and how to contain them, and also having your edges really thick and tight and being able to crack them open to feel more. And also it sounds like it's been great to help you just regulate or self-regulate in moments where everything gets really blurry, or someone's field and your field can get really murky, and you're not quite sure how to have a healthy seal so that you can actually get out of the room and not get caught in or caught up in their things that come up.
Absolutely. And
great.
I often find me in the hallways shaking. Take it up. Doing a Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Everyone kind of finds their thing, isn't it? Whether it's, you know, a bit of sage in between each patient, or take your shoes off in between clients and go outside, stand on the grass, or whatever it might be. But it's, it's a necessary part of working in this way. whatever it is that you find to do.
Yeah.
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 So this year you've done a couple of workshops, which has been brilliant. I was there at the low workshop that you did earlier this year. We're filming this in 2023, which was just extraordinary. You are such a wonderful teacher, and I am so grateful that you live so close to me, because it means I have this wonderful connection that's there with someone who has been on this path for longer, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to you. And then you've got other workshops coming up this year, or they might have passed already by the time this episode airs. But I might be putting you on the spot here. So does it feel like that's something that there might be more of coming from Johannah?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll keep stringing you.
I think I might do one more this year. I've sort of seemed to be getting into this sort of like this pattern emerging and maybe doing one a quarter kind of thing. Life's pretty full with teaching qigong and running a practice and kids and all that. So I try not to, try to make it manageable. At the same time, I just have this experience often when I'm sharing the medicine. It's just like my heart opens and it becomes as big as the world, and it's just like the most beautiful experience. And if it feels that good, like you want to keep doing it. So
well, it feels like that on the receiving end as well. So it's the spirit's working with you and through you. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. So it wasn't something that I ever thought I would do, but it's just this medicine's so important. And it sounds really wanky, but I believe it can change the world. I really do. And I just want more and more people to get in contact with it and to experience it and to practice it. Because imagine if there's all these clinics all over Australia, all over Victoria and the world, and we're all doing this work and we're helping people shine. That's going to change. It's going to change everything.
So good. It feels like there's a huge wave of it moving through Melbourne. This is where I live, and you're just outside of Melbourne. Yeah, the interest in it and people coming to workshops to learn about it, it's something has just shot up in the last couple of years, and all of a sudden, a lot of people are leaning in, which is very exciting.
Super exciting.
Super exciting. And if people wanted to get in touch with you or find out, and we can include these things in the notes, if people wanted to join your mailing list, or if they wanted to jump on your website and look and see when things are coming up, I can probably just include that in the notes with hyperlinks so people can click onto that. But is there anything coming up what are your thoughts about what you might be doing this year, or is it too early to say?
No, so I'm running a pulse workshop in a couple of weeks' time, in June, and then I haven't quite got a date yet for later this year, but I'm thinking maybe September, October, for a seniors workshop.
Great. Gosh, we've been so spoiled covering so many of the complement channels this year with different people coming to Melbourne. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, this has been fabulous. Is there anything else that you feel like you might want to add or share about pulses? Any little, maybe a little word of encouragement for people going, this all sounds amazing. Oh, how do I get my foot in the door with pulses? How do I start, getting access to this?
Well, they could buy Anne's book, the Dunning with Pulses book. That's a very, very good book, and it's incredibly comprehensive. And I didn't think you could learn pulses from a book, but she's done a really good job of putting it in a book. It's a really great resource.
The diagrams are amazing.
They are, and beautiful paintings. Also kind of convey the energy of what you want to be feeling. So that's a great resource. Find a practitioner that you resonate with. And I mean, really, that's how they traditionally were taught, is that, in an apprenticeship arrangement where you would, they would take the pulse and then you would take the pulse and they would tell you, you would work. So you'd receive from them what they're feeling and then you would feel it. And I think having a mentor and someone you can work with is so invaluable. And it's it is the tradition of how it was taught, Well, actually, I mean, Jeffrey learned pulses from his grandfather. He was his teacher, and his grandfather would just do qigong. He would do qigong, and this is a tight pulse, and he would take his pulse, and then he would do qigong, and this is a choppy pulse. So that's how he learned. Which is
That's wild.
It's so wild, but I mean, for a lot of other people, it would be where the patient comes in and they take the pulse. So I think the tried and true is a pretty good way of, and if you're wanting to learn the complement channels, there are more and more practitioners popping up around Victoria and New South Wales, and and I think now northern New South Wales is like spreading in Queensland.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Oh, that's all really helpful. I'm sure people are going to listen to this and feel inspired and encouraged and curious, if nothing else, about what are all these other channels I've never heard of and what they can do. So this has been fabulous.
Well,
thank you so much, Johannah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Okay, I'm sure we'll connect soon. And thanks so much for listening and watching today, everybody. We'll just might call it a day here. Okay, see you later.